Hello everyone. In our previous videos, we discussed the power sharing arrangements in Belgium and Sri Lanka. What do we learn from these two stories? Belgium and Sri Lanka both are democracies, but power sharing arrangements in these two countries are different. If we look at Belgian model, leaders of Belgium took a different path. They recognized the existence of regional differences and cultural diversities. Leaders have realized the importance of unity of the country by giving equal respect to the feelings and interests of different communities. They made four amendments to the constitution to make arrangements which would enable everyone to live together within the same country, which resulted in peaceful coexistence. If we look at Sri Lankan model, leaders of the Sinhala community sought to secure dominance refused to share power with others. They passed an act to recognize Sinhala as the only official language and made many preferential policies to disregard Tamils, which resulted in violent conflicts in the form of civil war. After looking at these two stories, we can answer the following question: why power sharing is desirable? There are two reasons why power sharing is desirable. One is prudential and the other one is moral. If we look at prudential reasons, power sharing helps to reduce possibility of conflict between social groups. Since social conflict often leads to violence and political instability, power sharing is essential to ensure stability. Belgium model is the best example for this. In Belgium, power was shared among different ethnic groups, which solved the problem of conflict. And when power was not shared among the people in Sri Lanka, they had a civil war. So, in modern democracies, power sharing is desirable. If we look at moral reasons, it is good for democracy and it is the very spirit of democracy. A democracy means rule of people. A democratic rule involves sharing power with those affected by its exercise. People have right to be consulted on how they are to be governed. Let us have a look at some forms of power sharing in modern democracies. Power sharing among different organs of government, power sharing among different levels of government, power sharing among different social groups, political parties, and pressure groups. Let us discuss them separately. Power sharing among different organs of government is also known as horizontal distribution of power. In this type of power sharing, different organs of the government placed at same level to exercise different powers. Such separation ensures none of the organ can exercise unlimited powers. Each organ checks other. Another form of power sharing is power sharing among different levels of government. There will be one general government for the entire country and governments at provincial or regional level. In many countries, there are different names for these regional governments, like state governments in our country. The constitution clearly lays down the powers of different levels of government. This is called federal divisions of power. Power sharing among different social groups, such as religious and linguistic groups. Community government in Belgium is a good example of this arrangement. In some countries like India, there are some constitutional and legal arrangements for socially weaker sections and women in the form of reserved constituencies in assemblies and the parliament of the country. By making such arrangements, constitution ensures their participation in the government and the administration. This method is used to give minority communities a fair share in power. The final form of power sharing among political parties, pressure groups, and movements. In a democracy, the citizens must have freedom to choose among various contenders for power. In contemporary democracies, there is a competition among different political parties. Such competition ensures that power does not remain in one hand. In the long run, power is shared among different political parties that represents different ideologies and social groups. Sometimes this kind of sharing can be direct. when two or more political parties form an alliance to contest elections. If their alliance is elected, they form a coalition government and thus share power. So we can take an example from India. NDA, National Democratic Alliance, which is led by BJP and its respective alliances, and UPA, United Progressive Alliance, which is led by Congress along with its respective alliances. Let us have a look at forms of power sharing in India. The forms of power sharing we just discussed we can see in India among different organs of government, legislative, executive, and judiciary, among different levels of government, union, state, and local governments. We will discuss further about this form of power sharing in our next chapter, federalism. Among social groups, in the form of reserved constituencies to ensure the representation of minority communities like SCs and STs. Among different political parties, in the form of coalition governments, for example, NDA and UPA. After discussing these topics, we can answer the following questions. Give one prudential reason for power sharing. Give one moral reason for power sharing. Give one difference between the power sharing of Belgium and Sri Lanka. What are the forms of power sharing in modern democracies? Explain any three. What do you mean by vertical distribution of power? What do you mean by horizontal distribution of power? Describe the system of power sharing in India. Thank you.